Well, let's get to our first topic of discussion. Now, Nigeria's challenge revenue base, which has pushed the nation's economic managers to opt for borrowing issuance and, of course, new taxes and levies, is said to be causing more harm than good to the rail sector. Like some other players in the economy, the sectorial heads of the carbonated soft drinks and subsector of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria have kicked against the planned move by the federal government to propose an additional 20% ad-valorem tax on non-alcoholic drinks. They maintain that the proposed regulation, if implemented, will cause a serious decline in volume and revenue in their production base. It will interest you to know the manufacturing sector is currently contending with sundry issues. Let me highlight some of them: skyrocketing energy costs, rising inflation, foreign exchange scarcity, poor and inadequate infrastructure, increasing difficulties associated with ease of doing business, and other headwinds that increasingly challenge competitiveness in the global market. Now, to help us understand the pros and cons of this new excise tax on Nigeria's economy, I'm being joined via Zoom by an associate director. She's with PricewaterhouseCoopers Nigeria, Ugochi Ndebio. It's good to have you on the show. It's been a while. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Tolu. It's really good to be back here. I'm happy to be with you again.
Great. Now, my first question really will be, the excise duty regulation on non-alcoholic drinks was just gazetted, of course, or just gazetted by the Ministry of Finance. Now, let me ask what you think. In your view, what really do you think government intends to achieve with this?
I'm going to look at it in two ways. Really, the regulation brings a bit of clarity. So what it does is to bring a bit of clarity around the implementation of the non-alcoholic drinks excise tax that was introduced in the finance bill. Now, you know, this introduction was on in the finance bill, which should have taken effect in January of this year. But the implementation was postponed to June. So the implementation did start in June. However, there were no regulations guiding it. And so there were a lot of speculations around, is it going to be used, the implementation, is it going to be alongside that of, what you have for the beer and the tobacco industry? There was a lot of unclarity around it. And so the industry clamored that, look, when are you going to collect these taxes? What are the non-alcoholic drinks that are in here? What's the charging events? There were a lot of unanswered questions. So if we look at the good side, the regulation is good in the sense that it has brought some clarity to some of the issues that the industry raised around the implementation. But then again, it also then raises some areas of discordance to say, okay, exactly how is this going about? So yeah, the regulation is good in the sense that it brings clarity around things like what exactly, when you look at when you say the carbonated, sweetened, and non-alcoholic beverages, is this disjointed? Is this a conjunctive? So does it have to be all three, or can it just be one? So it brings clarity around that because it lists out what they mean by, the dutiable items. It also brings clarity around the time frames for the payments of the excise duties, because when they first started implementing it, they wanted to implement it based on you pay in the month of production. But the industry did kick against it and said, look, there's going to be a lot of unreconciled, because when I'm saying in the month, I can't tell you how much. So they provided that clarity. Okay, you pay next month following the month of production, and then there's also, they are not required to post a bond on like the BSG and the beer sector, and also the tobacco industry, who at the beginning of every year are required to post a bond, so that if they don't make payments, the customs can just go and collect it from the bank. It also provides clarity around the items that are not subject to this excise. So it did say things like medical drinks, but not included, of course, sports drinks. It also took out infant milk and milk in general. Products that have up to 75% of milk are not required to pay this duty. And also, I think manufacturers that produce less than 5,000 liters So there's that clarity. So that's a good thing. But then it then talks about other things like, it then introduces some other things like saying that powdered beverages or beverages in solid forms like capsules are also detailable. So there's that gray area to say, I mean, are these really beverages as contemplated in the law? And how are you really going to, particularly when there's no specific dilution, they don't have that specific dilution ratio. How do you then, what's the basis of the taxation? How are you going to do that taxation? Since the law has said 10 liters per, you're not taxing it in grams. It's 10 naira per liter. So what's the basis? And then I think I'll stop here really so that I'm not the only one talking.
But do you think there are any gaps looking at this regulation?
Well, yes. So if I look at this regulation, the gaps I see is that one, the last thing I talked about, which is the introduction of this powdered and capsule or solid beverages, is going to create some concern whether this is really the intent of the law, as included in the Finance Act of 2021. Then secondly, this regulation was just published it was gazetted in September, but really it was made available to the public sometime in October. And then it does have some requirements in there for notification. It says that if you were producing this, you should have registered with the customs by the 30th of June. Now, that is an impossibility. You can't publish something in September and require people to have made the registration in June. So that really should be clarified, or they should sort that out. And then secondly, the acts, another thing I felt like there was a bit of a necessity, it was not necessary, was to then also, it says, yes, in accordance with Section 13 of the Finance Act, it then seeks to impose that tax. It's unnecessary because really the finance minister doesn't have a right to impose that tax. It can only be changed by way of another finance bill. So if you put it in there, it then looks as if the finance minister has a right to to make those changes, and that's not exactly what it is. So
great.
those are at least the issues that I see in that.
But as much as I know that Nigeria is in need of course, revenue at this time, raising funds always, they are looking everywhere where we can get money, particularly non-oil space. But with this new regulation, will it better us? What's the impact? What do you think this would impact, particularly with regards to maybe revenue for government?
Okay. You can't look at the regulation without looking at the enabling provision of the law, which is the Finance Act. And if I take all of them together and say, would Nigeria be better off with this excise GT? My first response would be balance and context really matters. You can't look to impose higher, excise taxes without an alignment of the economic indices in the country. You started this by saying, talking about what the manufacturing industry faces. Manufacturing industry is facing a plethora of challenges. You're looking at things like inflation is hitting them really badly, infrastructural deficit like power. Power alone, I mean, the price of diesel has increased by over 400%. And they still have to survive. There's FX scarcity, they've got multiplicity of taxes. These are huge, huge challenges that no one is talking about how to fix. And if you then continue to just say, oh, okay, others are introducing excise taxes, we need to do that. If you do that, you're not matching apples with apples. I mean, you only create a discordance in your system. So really, if we choose to do that in Nigeria, we should always look at we should try to balance things out. And right now, it's not looking balanced. It just looks like everything is tilted against the industry. Again, if you look at the industry data, I mean, they don't seem to be doing well. If you even look at the NBS publication for the third quarter, the food, beverage, and tobacco industry has declined by 3.75% this third quarter. Now, if you also look at the average between 2016 and 2022, the industry has grown by less than 2%. And this is, the manufacturing industry is supposed to be an industry that is supposed to be the backbone of any economy. And if they're struggling like this, seeking to tax, introduce new taxes, or implement further increases would only sabotage whatever the government is trying to fix. So even if you get anything in terms of, oh yeah, I'm getting some increased excise, you would have shortfalls in things like your CIT because the companies are not doing well. They're recording losses. You would have shortfall in your VAT because they're not making sales. So that is not clear that that overall picture has been considered by the government. Again, if you look at the fact, you say, oh, okay, you can easily pass it across to your consumers. Again, in Nigeria, that may work outside, in industries or in countries where, all things being equal, generally, that's the way it's supposed to work. But then you look at Nigeria. Nigeria has 33% unemployment rates. In fact, 42.5% of them are youths. NBS also publishes that 133 million Nigerians are multidimensionally poor. How do you think you can pass this to the final consumers? It doesn't work. And that's why you see that the industry is recording significant and huge losses. So putting them in an excisable way, where you're putting excise taxes on their products, it's literally killing the industry. And then you then look at if you then say, okay, what are other countries doing? Look at other African countries, particularly the ones that are manufacturing. You see that some of them are, particularly where we have this global crisis, some are freezing taxes, some are reducing. We've seen instances where some have reduced taxes, and some have just said, okay, let's just maintain this, let everybody go through the rocky situations. You can't just, just say, oh, okay, the government needs money, so we have to continue. You can't continue to tax the compliant people into poverty. And so the question for me is, you have to be able to, if you want to implement things, it has to be in a predictable, sustainable, and modest increases, and not just, all over the places. And from the indices between June, when they started implementing this excise on non-alcoholic drinks, to date, the indices don't look good. So I think it's even an area that the government needs to relook and say, these are the objectives I have tried to get, which is one, increase government revenue, and then reduction in consumption of sugar taxes. Have I really achieved this? And I think the answer might not be very positive.
Beautiful stuff. But let's look at it from another perspective, reacting to some saying that imposition of this excise duty will help to curb sugar-related diseases and maybe one way or the other raise revenue for the health sector. What do you make of this, Ugochi?
Okay. First, I think it's very important that in making laws, we must always rely on data. And the first question is, does Nigeria have a sugar consumption problem? Now, there are reports out there published by, that Nigeria's per capita consumption of sugar is currently at 8 kg per annum. World Health Organization, the standard they have set is at 9.1. So we are currently even lower than the standard set by World Health. And then you then compare us with countries like UK that has a 30 kg per capita consumption per annum, and the US that has 46 kg. We're not in the same buckets. Refined sugar is not exactly Nigeria's problem. Where we have problems is more in terms of carbohydrates. And I think that's what contributes more to the health-related problems that we see in terms of obesity and diabetes. So I think we should look a bit more closely into the data before we then say, oh, okay, we're trying to reduce. The data doesn't support what we're saying we're doing. And then you look at the regulations. The regulation is also seeking to tax flavored water. If you're really trying to cut sugar consumption, flavored water will not be what you're looking to tax. And then if you're doing all of this and you're not looking at things like, you don't have a holistic approach to it to say, okay, I have, targeted educational campaigns to support, diabetic obese patients. I'm trying to encourage people to live a healthier lifestyle, consume more healthy foods. if you do it in isolation or having a robust framework for your healthcare, you're not going to achieve the intention of what you say you're going to achieve. So you don't look at it and say you are trying to reduce the intake of sugary and health-related diseases. And if you don't have the entire framework together, you're not going to achieve what you set out to achieve. So really, if the government is serious, they need to really look into developing a robust framework for, one, earmarking the funds, because currently these taxes are not even earmarked for the health sector. They go into the federal pocket, which is shared equally, shared between the federal, state, and local governments, and they do with it as they please. If you're looking to target developments in the health sector, you're looking to have people more on the, where you can subsidize healthcare, you have to then target some of these taxes towards those things. And if it's currently not being done, then really you're not getting the desired outcome. So really it's a lose-lose for the government, because in terms of taxes, you're not getting that much. In terms of the healthcare, you're not also getting that much.
Very interesting conversation here, I must tell you. But finally, what do you make of this in its entirety as we move on? It's a wrap of a year already, and we are moving into an election year. So many are thinking of a lot of things running through everyone's mind. What's your final take on this?
Okay, I completely agree. Nigeria is in dire straits.
Yep.
We need to raise revenue. And that everybody knows, and everybody, I think everybody understands. However, there are other ways that we can seek to go about that. You don't tax the compliant people out of poverty. Every day we keep screaming, there's a lot of the untaxed markets out there. There are a lot of people who are not paying taxes. Government should focus to use data and bring in all of these people into the tax nets. That's currently not happening. You can't just focus on certain compliant individuals and seek to do that. So yes, we know we need to raise revenue, but there are other ways to raise revenue. Look at the untaxed market, try to bring more people into the tax nets. Then use, also try and close the compliance gaps. Who are the people that are not complying? And then, you also need to look to harmonize taxes. Now, the manufacturing companies, they have to pay excise, they pay VAT, they pay TET, they pay CIT, they pay, it's all over the place. There's just so many taxes. Harmonize it, make administrative costs less for the companies that are complying. And then try and look to ways to reduce leakages. Our system has a lot of leakages in terms of, money that is coming into the government coffers and not necessarily, being used for what they're supposed to use for. And I said, lastly, I think there should be a lot of emphasis on efficiency in government spending. We haven't seen a lot of that, and it's not very encouraging for companies who are compliant. So I'll say the government should look into these areas and not look to, just the low-hanging fruits, say, oh, these are the compliance ones, I just continue to increase their taxes. It's not workable, it's not sustainable, and it's not going to take Nigeria to the promised land.
I must thank you so much for your time, Associate Director, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ugochi Ndebio. Thank you for making real sense of this topic of discourse. We do hope to have you join the program sometime soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Tolu. It's been good having been here with you.
All right, then I appreciate that. Enjoy the rest of your day. Well, coming up.